his future held, injuries, things like that, but he's had a phenomenal historic year.
Well, someone that knows all of that, plus the NBA and much more, Chuck Cooperstein, a voice of the Mavericks, joins us on SicEm365 Radio. Coop, thanks so much for your time. Mavericks and Clippers, is this going to be one of those we talk about for quite some time? Does it have that kind of a build-up to it?
I mean, I think it does. I mean, I think the contentiousness of last summer, everything that went down, and just so many what-ifs from the Mavericks standpoint, they're so much stronger from the personnel standpoint, at least at the start of this series. The Clippers obviously have a lot to prove after their meltdown against Denver and, frankly, a near meltdown against the Mavericks just from a behavioral standpoint. They've added some parts to try to make them better, and obviously Tyronn Lue is now coaching them, and he brings a different vibe than Doc Rivers does. I mean, both are championship coaches. It should be tremendous theater.
Chuck, I know that in a lot of regards, the Mavericks are better than they were a year ago. In a lot of regards, they probably feel like to a lot of fans they're stuck in neutral. In the playoffs, where will they be better, and where can they improve on last year?
Well, I think just really from a personnel standpoint, number one, Jalen Brunson's playing, and Jalen Brunson's been just fantastic coming down the stretch of the season. Basically, you had Trey Burke playing backup minutes and at times even starters minutes against the Clippers last year. So Brunson's there. You've got a bigger combination of Cauley Stein and Powell, neither of whom played in that series. Cauley Stein opted out. Powell obviously was recovering from the Achilles. Powell's playing his best basketball of his season and arguably of his career right now. And just more bodies to try to deal with Ivica Zubac, who clearly has given the Mavericks problems over the last couple of years. And, who knows where Serge Ibaka is after coming back the other night. He missed 30-odd games, still has a nerve issue with his back. But just from that standpoint, and then by having those guys, too, that also reduces the need to play Maxi Kleber as many minutes as he had to play in that playoff series. And Maxi's kind of banged up anyway, but he's got a full week to heal. But nonetheless, Kleber has always been kind of a guy that the Mavericks have believed that was best used as a 25 to 27 minute a game guy. Well, I mean, he was well up over 30 in the series, and he had to be because of all the absences that they had of their bigs. They were just so shorthanded in that regard. So now, they're better aligned to play that series than they were a year ago. And then there's just the experience factor for guys like Luka and to a lesser degree KP, of having gone through it and knowing what it's going to be like.
Chuck, what have you seen from KP since coming back last week?
He looks really sharp on offense. I mean, his shooting looks great. He's moving well. The defense has not been great, and I'm not exactly sure why. I mean, his rebounding is fine. That's not an issue. But why is he not moving as well laterally as he did last year when he was a legitimate threat to stop people at the rim? I mean, even in the game last night against Minnesota, it's like guys, and I don't know if it's just because, they were just making shots, but they were able to kind of stretch out and create a little extra space against him, get the ball up on the board and score. I think I'd like to see a little more from him in that regard. And again, granted, he's been off for most of the last few weeks, but I still think that there's still a lot of the strength stuff and the conditioning stuff that even in the course of this week without playing is going to make him better when the series starts. And I kind of look back to when the snowstorm happened and the Mavericks took 8 days off after that. And they came back, and he came back with a vengeance, especially on the defensive end of the floor. And that's going to really be huge in this series.
What is it like and it's a normalcy in a way, 72 games, not the normal 82. And, of course, last year was everything but normal. Coop, for you, I saw a note where Nadell and them were in Houston, able to broadcast from the actual site. How close are you to doing that now?
I don't think we're doing this in the playoffs. I think this is going to be a next year thing. I mean, it's just, listen, the Mavericks are going to have, I think they got the permission to bring 9,000 people into the American Airlines Center Again, I'm not sure why the NBA is controlling this as opposed to teams deciding what they want to do on their own, as we've seen basically in every other sport. Why the NBA is so heavy-handed when it comes to this, because obviously every situation is different, and but that's what it is. And so to that end, I think they've been super cautious and super careful all year long, and I think that will sustain itself, at least for local radio, during the playoffs. I mean, I think the network TV guys will be traveling, but none of the local people will. And, of course, there's only local TV in the first round, and then they go away for after that.
Yeah.
They don't make you wear a mask in the booth, do you, Chuck?
No, I don't. I do not wear one in the booth.
That to me has been one of the kind of strange things about all this. Like watching a game that they did in San Francisco where there's no people in the stadium and the only people in the room are Joe Buck and Troy Aikman, and every play is called like this.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of optics involved here. A lot of them.
What do you think about these play-in games and the buzz that it's created, Chuck? I've seen constant conversation. Warriors-Lakers obviously is going to be a massive game, but do you like this? Do you like the play-in game format?
In theory, I don't. Just because I think if you play 72 or 82 games, that should be more than enough games to determine who the best 8 teams are in each conference. But the reality is, with the desire of teams who are not going to be in the playoffs to tank and to try to improve their ping pong ball odds in the lottery, this took that away, and it forced teams to play. And even though there was some shenanigans, within the group of 8 that was already qualified to play in the playoffs, look at what the Clippers did in the last couple of nights. Generally speaking, if you're fighting, I like the idea that there were more teams playing games that actually had some significance attached to them. And I think it was better for the teams actually to get ready to play in playoff games. And I think obviously the fans are huge beneficiaries of it because they're watching people that under normal circumstances they're paying really good money to see. And so I mean, perhaps unintentionally, the NBA has stumbled into something here over the last couple of years. I don't know that it will be this extensive going forward in an 82-game season that has to be negotiated with the Players Association. It could look more like what we had last year in the bubble, and then with certain benchmarks that have to be reached, maybe even for play-in to happen. But I think there's no doubt that it's definitely struck a chord with people. And look, if the Lakers and Warriors weren't playing, it probably wouldn't have quite the cachet. But
right.
You take that, the Celtics are playing. The Wizards with Russell Westbrook and Bradley Beal are playing in these games this week. And it does lend a little bit of theater to what ordinarily is just a kind of a real humdrum into the regular season before the playoffs actually begin.
Chuck, when you were a young kid and you were growing up and you first realized that maybe one day you wanted to broadcast or be a part of sports, I'm a little bit older, but obviously Howard Cosell, among many others, Keith Jackson, and even back then older than that. But Marv Albert announced the announcement that he's going to retire after this playoff season. I saw a note you made about Marv Albert. How much did Marv Albert influence you getting into broadcasting?
He is the reason. I mean, I could not imagine anything more exciting than listening to Marv from Madison Square Garden doing Knicks and Rangers games. When I'm a young kid, I've got my transistor radio under my pillow. My parents are thinking I'm asleep, and heck, I'm not asleep. I'm listening to Marv, and the way, the level of excitement and descriptiveness that he brought to the air, it made it just something that I thought would be a really cool thing to be able to do, and that has never changed. And I think for most people never heard Marv on radio, and that's where Marv was his greatest. Marv was fantastic on TV, and he was especially fantastic because he was great with his analysts. Now, Marv had no ego, so Marv was worried, making sure that his analysts looked great. And, whether it was just how the game would be described or, just some joke telling that was going on during the game. He had that sense of humor. He was with David Letterman how many times? 50 odd times when Letterman had his late night show on NBC. He was just phenomenal. His description was amazing. And frankly, the moment when Willis Reed walked through the tunnel in Game 7 of the NBA Finals in 1970, is the way he described it. It was just so breathtakingly stunning that I thought that it might be a good way to go. And I just feel incredibly fortunate that I've been able to do what I do. I've had a chance to meet Marv several times, and he's always been gracious to me, and he's gracious to everyone. He really is. There are a lot of really good announcers. There are some who are really elite announcers. And then there are those who are transcendent, and Marv was absolutely transcendent.
No question about it. I wanted to give you a chance to talk about that. So with the Mavericks, where they are, the series against the Clippers, how, and the West, of course, is going to be a buzzsaw, and the East has got some teams in it that they're really good as well. What would it be like if they don't survive this opening series? Would that be a disappointment, or would that be just yet another stepping stone of what they're trying to be?
I mean, I think it's both, because I think they believe that they're going to win. They believe they have what it takes to win. Now, whether they'll be able to do it against a team that's very good and also extremely motivated after their meltdown last summer, it remains to be seen. A lot depends on how the series is played. How well do they play? What are the games like? How that all plays out, I think, can go into the narrative forward, but the Mavericks expect to win. They absolutely expect to win this series, and if they don't win, it will be a disappointment, because it basically will be, well, here's where we are, 2 years in a row. But at the same time, if they play better than they played, and frankly, I think they should, they've got better players on their team that are going to be available throughout the course of the series, then that is kind of taking it a step forward. But look, the bottom line is here, every year in the West, it is an absolute buzzsaw. And it was funny, they were talking on TNT, Chris Paul, after the Blazers game last Thursday night, and they were trying to, do the whole matchup thing, and Chris Paul, and no.
Uh-huh.
And this is just going to be ridiculously hard, regardless of who we play. And that is the right attitude to take. And you know what? It should be that way, because the playoffs are supposed to be the best against the best. And that's what's going on right now.
Hey, Coop, thank you, man. Have fun. Enjoy. Appreciate your time very much.
Hey, David, thanks for having me. Thanks, guys.
Chuck Cooperstein, voice of the Mavericks, SicEm365 Radio.
Well, that's unfortunate that media won't be allowed in the arenas. I think that's kind of weird when you're, like he said with the Mavericks, 7,000, 8,000 or so fans, 9,000, whatever the cap is. But one thing that this year has shown us, home field advantage matters. It matters a lot. And, I think everybody always kind of knew that, but we didn't really know that. Like, yeah, of course, having the home crowd in your favor, helps, but it helps a lot more than we ever gave it credit for, I feel like, and that's been blatantly obvious over the last year.
Especially when you can go on the road and not have, in an empty stadium.
Yeah,
and
just
nobody's like, if you had a good flight, you're on equal footing.
Other than having to travel, you don't know that you're not at your place, really.
Yeah.
I mean, this sounds the exact same, so there's no real oh no, we got to play in New York in front of those fans. Like, what fans? There's not any. So, yeah, it's been pretty obvious how much home court, home field, home diamond matters, and I'm excited about this series. I think it'll be a good one. I think Coop answered that question perfectly, because you don't really know until they play the games how you're feeling about whether or not they make it out of the first round. Do they lose in the final game possible, or do they get swept? I mean, that's going to determine how you feel about potentially exiting the first round. But I do think they can win this series, and I'm hoping they do. It definitely would keep me far more invested in the playoffs, having a team I root for involved with it.
Now, it'll be fun. I probably, if you put all the games together, throughout the 72-game season, I've probably watched a quarter total of games. On occasion, I'll watch a Mavericks game because I get to pick it up, or I'll watch it. And I watched a game yesterday with Golden State and Memphis, I think it was, for just a little bit because Curry was, doing his thing. But I do have I'm intrigued by the postseason, by the playoff, by the matchups, including the Mavericks and Clippers, because it's kind of their time. It's kind of time to blink or get off the pot.
Well, they need to make progress.
Yeah.
They need to make progress.
Yeah, I agree.
And they don't have to win a world title in the next 2 years, but they have to make progress. And so winning this first round series, beating the Clippers, would definitely be in line with progress for sure. I will say Coop is absolutely right, though. Like, this Playin Games created a lot of conversation, but a big part of that, and I think that it would still have some buzz even next year, but if we're talking, Milwaukee versus Charlotte, I don't think everybody's like, this Playin Game's freaking awesome. No, it's Lakers Warriors. That's why the Playin Game's freaking awesome. And so, I think that's definitely added